Welcome to session one of the first block of Blue Shield International Training for National Committees. This is one training course with three, and as we say, possibly more blocks in it. Block one, which we're going to be delivering in the end of 2021, is on the role of the Blue Shield and wider CPP. Block two is breaking down CPP into manageable pieces, and block three, Blue Shield at a national level. And block two and three will be done in the first and then second quarter of 2022 next year. And we have a number of possible other blocks that we may offer if people would like to go into a little bit more detail. An obvious one, which Emma already teaches, is a more detailed look at CPP in international law. And there are a couple of others that we've got in mind that we might want to expand, or that you might ask us to expand, but we won't mention those at the moment and see if our thinking coincides with yours. So one training course, but in the first instance, three blocks. The process, all of the sessions will be pre-recorded as this and made available for about 6 weeks for members of national committees to view at their own pace and time. At the end of that 6-week period, a series of live sessions will be held, probably 1 or 2 each for the West and the East time zones, to discuss the sessions and provide time for questions and answers and general feedback and discussion. Details of these will have been sent out by Emma before you listen to this. And then we'll gather some further feedback via an online survey. The audience for this should be for all members of national committees and not just office holders. So please do make this available, and the information that Emma sends out in emails, make it available to all of your members of all of the national committees, so we get as many people trained and thinking in the same way as possible. All of the sessions will relate as clearly as possible to those already identified in the 6 areas of activity: coordination, legal compliance, implementation and policy development, proactive protection and risk preparedness, education, training and capacity building, emergency response, and post-disaster recovery and long-term support. The block one is divided into 11 sessions, and we hope none of those sessions will last for longer than at most 30 minutes. Session one, the introduction to the course, myself. You get me, I'm afraid, quite a lot in block one. My apologies for that. But in session two, I'll talk about key points about the Blue Shield. In session three, a brief history and overview of cultural property protection, and a very, very brief introduction to some of the key legal frameworks and context. Then the next 4 sessions are handed over to our founding 4 organizations: the International Council of Archives, the International Council of Museums, the International Council on Monuments and Sites, and the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions. And they take sessions 4 to 7. I'm back in session 8 talking about the Blue Shield approach. Session 9 is Michael de la Cruz talking about CPP and the National Uniformed Sector, military organizations and operations, and how national committees can integrate into that process. Session 10 is me talking about CPP and the international and national humanitarian sector, and then again a very brief summary done by myself as session 11. So that's the full package that you'll get for block one to be delivered in October, November. The aims of the training course are firstly to bring all national committees to a common level of knowledge and understanding of the Blue Shield, general property, cultural property protection, and the basics of international humanitarian law. And secondly, to demonstrate clearly to potential funders that we are a coherent international organisation with a specific niche worthy of investment. Some of the material you'll know and be familiar with already, some will be new. Our intention is to try to bring all of us into all of that information into a single coherent package, and all of us up to the same level of understanding across that board. I mentioned the need for external funding, and I thought I'd just mention the current funding position. At the moment, the Blue Shield Secretariat is currently funded through the UNESCO Chair in Cultural Property Protection and Peace at Newcastle University in the UK, my university. The current second phase of the UNESCO Chair ends on the 31st of December 2023, so just over 2 years away. There is no decision yet on whether Newcastle will apply to UNESCO for a third phase of the chair, nor, if it does, whether UNESCO will grant a further 4-year phase. There is no guarantee, if the chair is renewed, that the funding for the 1.5 additional staff, that's Emma Cunliffe and Michael de la Cruz, that are there to support the chairholder will continue. So finding additional external funding will be the primary focus of the chairholder, me, supported by an advisory committee over the next couple of years. We can't guarantee that Newcastle's commitment will continue because they've already given us 8 years of enormous support. The objectives of the training course, there are 8, and I'm just going to go through them slowly to make sure everybody's up to speed with what we are actually trying to do over these next 6 or 8 months. Firstly, to provide a common understanding of the roles and responsibilities of the Blue Shield Board, the International Secretariat, and national committees. Second, to emphasise Blue Shield's role in brokering relations with and between the cultural and heritage sector, the humanitarian sector, and what we refer to as the uniformed sector, police, customs, first responders, emergency services, and of course, the military and armed forces. 3, to encourage participants to think of the complexity and the importance of different community values and identities related to cultural property. 4th, to familiarise participants with key stakeholders and existing and potential organisational partners in the conduct of CPP and principles of engagement with these stakeholders and partners. 5, to provide a basic knowledge and understanding of international humanitarian law in relation to CPP, and in particular, the 1954 Hague Convention on the Protection of Cultural Property in the Event of Armed Conflict, and its 2 protocols of 1954 and 1999. And secondly, the 1970 Convention on the means of prohibiting and preventing the illicit import, export, and transfer of ownership of cultural property. And secondly, to look at other relevant international conventions, declarations, and so on. 6th objective is to provide knowledge and understanding of Blue Shield policies relating to CPP in armed conflict. The 7th, to introduce the inclusion of CPP as part of human-made or natural disaster response. And 8th, and finally, to introduce the relevance to and the potential impact on cultural property protection to national and international policy and action. And we sort of summarize all of those aims and objectives in this image, which is a diagram you'll see a number of times over the next few months, but it's how we envisage the Blue Shield at the moment. So we have that triangle with the 3 points of the triangle being the 3 critical sectors. Firstly, the cultural and heritage sector, the uniform sector as defined earlier, and the humanitarian sector, all of whom come to look at the same issue of trying to build healthy, peaceful, secure, sustainable communities, but from very different starting points. And that, as described to me recently by a military colleague, the inside of the triangle is the safe space where those three sectors can negotiate and understand each other's complexities, priorities, and constraints, but where hopefully the amalgamation of the three will deliver far better, far stronger, far more wide-ranging CPP. But that triangle, of course, sits within a broader context of politics, of legal implications, the law, and the media, and increasingly social media. And so the influence of those three is critical to the discussion within the triangle, and how we mediate and mitigate the impact of those three is part and parcel of the discussion within the Blue Shield triangle. And then finally, at the bottom of that context is the reason and the people we do it for, the communities at a local level, at a national level, and at an international level, cross-cutting in all sorts of different ways. But those communities in the aspiration to build those healthy, peaceful, secure, sustainable communities. And that's where we are in terms of the whole project, and that's the introduction to Block 1. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll be back soon to speak to you with the next session. Thank you.